Hello. I'd just like to talk a little bit about the working class and the image of the working class that's put across by our media, which is mostly middle class or bourgeois. Those are the interests that they serve. I read a tweet last week, I think it was, towards the beginning of last week, and it read something along the lines of working class people aren't interested in the arts, or working class people aren't interested in the theater. Nothing could be further from the truth. Working class people are very much interested in the arts. Working class people play musical instruments, they paint, they draw, they write poetry. Some of them even participate in amateur dramatics. So this idea that working class people are Philistines is nonsense. The biggest Philistines are, in fact, among the middle classes and indeed the upper classes, the aristocracy, the real bourgeoisie. I come from a working class background, and I can tell you categorically that I was very much interested in the arts and the sciences from a very early age. I found both of them quite fascinating. In fact, I spent a lot of my younger years drawing. I'd rather draw than take an interest in sports. That's how I was. I also like to bring up the issue of a white working class, this phrase, white working class. The only people who ever use that phrase are actually middle class and bourgeois people who write for the Murdoch Press or write for Spiked. I'm talking here about people like Brendan O'Neill, very fond of using that term, white working class. But what does it actually mean? Well, what the people who've actually created that phrase intend is for you to think of racists, basically, or alternatively, they want you to believe that other fractions within the working class, that is to say, working class black people, working class Jews, working class Asians. Did you see what I did there? It's all about syntax. Now, I'm not saying that there aren't working class white people. There's just no such thing as the white working class. Anyway, I digress. And what they actually want you to think is that those groups are privileged over the white working class. It's like the phrase black on black crime or black on black violence, which is often thrown out by racists as a riposte to accusations of racism and especially racial profiling. Thing is, you never ever hear the phrase white on white crime, and there's a very good reason for that, because it's nonsense. Yet white people, white criminals, will commit crimes against other white people. In fact, white criminals will even commit crimes against black and Asian people and Jews. So this phrase itself, it's absolute, it's very misleading. And you'll probably see more of it in the coming weeks and months, especially now that Boris Johnson has set up this racial inequality commission. Today I read that he'd appointed Tony Sewell to one of the leading roles within that commission. Now, Tony Sewell is problematic for pretty much the same reasons as Trevor Phillips is problematic. He doesn't believe in the existence of systemic, structural, or institutional forms of racism. In fact, 10 years ago, Tony Sewell actually defended David Starkey in print in an article that he wrote for The Guardian. And he pretty much rehashes the same tropes that are used against black people, that black boys suffer from having no father in the household. Well, I've got to tell you this, actually, there are plenty of white families in which the father is absent. This is not something that is unique to black people in this country. Anyway, let's get back to this whole idea of white working class. When Marx and Engels wrote the words, "Workers of the world, you have nothing to lose but your chains," they meant it. They weren't talking about one group of workers over another. They were talking about the entire proletariat. And yes, I've read Marx. I've read plenty of Marx, but that doesn't make me a Marxist. Yeah? It means that I understand what I've read of Marx and Engels. I get fed up of hearing how, or seeing the way in which the word Marx or Marxist is used as a pejorative. And it's often by people who've never read any Marx or Engels, and who would probably recoil in horror if they ever saw the dust jacket of the Communist Manifesto in their local bookshop. In fact, they think that by looking at the dust cover that they're somehow going to be infected by these horrible Marxist ideas. Anyway, that's it for now. More soon.